The Arizona Fall League is over. All of the teams sent their scrubby relief pitchers, their prized position players. Ooh, that was good. And a bunch of other dudes. And we're going to talk about the results and what they mean for dynasty owners. It's time for Dingers.
This is Dingers, way more than fantasy baseball. We keep it real when we talk and knock it straight out the park. Let's see the stats, what's the average draft position? What kind of plays you making? Check the wins above replacement, check the lineups and the points. This I gotta see, what's your path to victory? Are they aiming for a dynasty? Get points going head to head, please don't do me no favors. We're always watching waivers, ain't no minor league, this is major, yeah. Dingers, let's go.
Welcome to Dingers, the only fantasy baseball podcast for smart people. It's not just Tristan Casas that wins you championships. That's why week in and week out we're delivering tips and strategies to help you live that straight up OG lifestyle. Joining me again, as always, Robbie Baseball from the Murder Room. Welcome, Robbie. How are we doing tonight, buddy?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. For anybody who is hanging out live on Twitter, you're welcome to hop in the chat and fire some questions or comments away if you want. You can always find us at Dingers Pod, find Ty at Turney Boss, and find me at Robbie Baseball 1. Ty, I spent way too long this weekend fixing someone else's boat motor. Not going to do that again.
Yeah.
What did you do with your weekend?
I mean, I have a 1-year-old, so I don't get to decide what my weekends are anymore. Not for the foreseeable future. So what I did was grocery shopping and entertain the child. That was it, which was fun.
Well,
he's starting to walk around. So now I can get him to do funny things, and it's great.
I understand that. My 5-year-old did have a little hospital trip yesterday. He's got a lot of breathing issues, and while he was home for over a year, homeschooling with dad, outside of boat motors, fishing, and baseball talk, he didn't get sick at all. And now that he's back at school around all the germs, he's struggling. So we ended up having to take him yesterday to the hospital. Thank goodness he didn't have to stay, and he's home now. But that is what happens sometimes when the immune system of a child is weak. So Ty, I hope for your sake that Bo's immune system is strong like bull, and you get to hang out with an energetic kid that's not sick all the time.
I think we need a chicken, and we need a gift for the wedding. Gold arm, no, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, it's he's had a couple of flus the last couple of weeks. Now his daycare's back and everybody's stirring around and all that fun stuff. So, I mean, that's part of life, but it is what it is. I mean, that you get sick, you get better.
And that's this time of year.
100%.
Right? That's this, and the other fun thing this time of year is baseball picks up again. And for us fantasy baseball fans, there's fun stuff that happens now that we get to sort out all through the offseason. But one of the first things is those MLB teams had to sort out their 40-man. And now we get to talk about the guys that are and aren't on it. That's a different episode than tonight's. But Rule 5 is another thing that's coming up shortly. I'm excited. I apologize if I've had audio issues. My sub pump just turned on, so that may have created a little funky noise. It's part of being down in the murder room. But also we've got player signings and we've got awards. So Ty, first, I think it's time we pat ourselves on the back for Shohei Ohtani winning AL MVP. I've only been tooting the horn since 16. And then we
were way ahead of the curve, and then we were way behind the curve. And now we're way ahead again. All is right in the world. We're good.
Yeah. It's just one of those, he was zigging when we were zagging, but we love the idea of Ohtani's ability to help your team, because no matter what you're doing, points leagues or categories, when you can start him, especially daily, right? When you can start him as a hitter on the right days and as a pitcher on the other, and then it became this fun thing of like, well, he's such a good hitter, even when he's pitching, which he's doing really well. Do I still want him to be a hitter? And most often for me, I always chose him as a hitter. And of course I own him everywhere that Ty and I are in the same league. Even Yahoo leagues where he is two separate. it was great. It was a fun ride. And then get that violin out. And for anyone who's curious, it will not be like this next year because he's already done it. So even if he's close in the stat line, no one's going to be impressed anymore. So it's like turn the page, right? So let's just allow everybody to enjoy the Ohtani we had this year, and let's just hope that he doesn't fall off a cliff.
The one thing that I really do like that happened that I saw this week was that he had called one of his goals out publicly that he wanted to be the MVP by age 27. This was his age 27 season. Mission accomplished. You love when you have smart goals, attainable, right? Let's do this. So I shout out to Ohtani. I did also love his thank you, which was clearly scripted by somebody else on his Instagram account. It was just very funny. Thank you for all of your well wishes. It is greatly appreciated. Thanks, Shohei.
Yeah. Boom. On to the next one.
Yeah, right.
He's like, all right, time to call grandma.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. It was basically the equivalent of getting like those birthday cards from grandma that have like, I love you, love grandma. Sign.
Or it's like, it's printed in your grandma loves you, and then below it says love grandma.
Just the stamp. You get it every year.
Yeah. Well, we do have news and notes. I don't know. Do you want a beverage now, or do you want a beverage post news and notes? I
think you know the answer to that.
Okay, let's do it.
A long time ago, someone decided to put stuff in glass bottles. In some of these bottles, they put juice or milk, and that was stupid. Today, only alcohol and a few other products remain in the containers from the gods. It's time for beers and bourbon, because good advice only comes in a bottle.
There we go.
Man, that sound, I can't. What's the name of the movie where it's the Warriors in like that like post-apocalyptic kind of city thing?
Titanic.
Warriors come out to play.
Oh yeah. What is that?
The way you clink that bottle reminded me of that.
What is that movie?
I forget what it's called too. Someone hit us up on Twitter. I cannot for the life of me remember it right now.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Jaeger bomb to start.
I have the very difficult to get a hold of Buffalo Trace. I was down in the home of bourbon, Kentucky, a couple weeks back, and we could not find Buffalo Trace anywhere, whether it was bar rails or in the store. It was nowhere to be found. So I was very happy to know that I had a bottle sitting at home waiting for me.
Well, Ty, you're the first guy to not be able to find a trace of buffalo. Animal extinction. Anyway, now I'll follow it up with a Pilsner. So J-Dub on Twitter was asking if my plan was to drop the Jaeger into the pill. And I might in the future. This one hit harder than the one on the last recording, but I don't mind starting off with the Jaeger bomb, which as I was talking to my wife before, sorry, Ty, I just said to her, why do we have this? It was brand new when we did the last episode. I don't know why we own this, but anyway, I got a lot of them left to do, a lot of shots left.
Well, I mean, you're older than you were the first time you did that shot.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, so, absolutely.
There's that.
I'm not at a chalet party in Wawa. Shout out the hometown. And the chalet party. And it sounds I
was going to say the chalet party is the notable part of that comment.
A chalet party might sound like, oh, I was at a fancy chalet and someone's thinking of like some fancy ski resort. No. This is like behind the motel, one of the motels. It wasn't the Big Bird Inn. It was, the Wawa Motor Inn, the name. And then they had chalets down the hill, which looked out over, and I'm not joking, looked out over the sewage treatment plant.
I mean, the visuals here are excellent.
Northern Ontario is beautiful. That's that location of the chalet. And the reason why we'd have chalet parties there is that somebody that was old enough could just rent the chalet, and then you could charge $5 or $10 a head to get in, and then you could make a bunch of money, but also everybody just got to drink. And it was like kind of quiet, a little bit quiet. Anyway.
I always laugh about when I'm in the US and I say cottage, and people just nod their head, right? Oh, it must be some Canadian thing, right? Because like, if you don't say lake house, they don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Seriously?
Yeah. It's a funny, at least in the South for sure. If there's some other part of the country that actually calls it a cottage, please someone tweet at us, because I've not found anybody that knows what the hell I'm talking about when I say cottage.
So I've had to figure out the distinction between a camp and a cottage. And I've decided that a camp does not have hydro, like a hydro line going to it, and probably doesn't have plumbing on the inside. And a cottage should have hydro in, or some type of power that's not just a generator, because I'm a member of a Brant Hunt Club, and it's a fishing place you go in. That's where I do my annual trip. It's a 100% a camp. Like, there are more mice than people in that building at all times. But at a cottage, that would not be acceptable. So I feel like that, hydro and mice count. But lake house, I'm curious. Lake house definitely sounds very Ozarks.
It sounds fancy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
what I was
anyway,
thinking.
as much as we want to talk about those differences, we're going to get into player differences. But first and foremost, Ty, some news and notes lately. I did say Ohtani. There has reportedly been the Rays making a record extension offer to Wander Franco. Yikes. That is trade written all over it. 3 years of Franco, and then he's a St. Louis Cardinal.
To me, it just screams that they know they're moving and that there's additional revenue coming.
Well, that's why when we talked about in our free agent episode, I said something, along the lines of signing a Rizzo, right? Get yourself like one of those guys that sells jerseys and also provides you a first baseman. But that's the good faith thing, right? Like when the Marlins got the new stadium and then made all those deals. A few other interesting things that have happened. Trevor Story has met with a few teams. Most notably, the Rangers have met with multiple outfielders. And we already know that the Rangers have a good history with, Asian players. And Sieko, we'll figure out the pronunciation shortly, will be posted by the time you're hearing this in podcast form. And that's going to be one of the guys. He's the more established version of Ha-Seong Kim coming in this year. And he very well could end up with the Rangers if they're going to be spending money, because that's somewhat of a common thing where they can get those guys in. Billy Epler is officially the Mets general manager. Great. Whatever. That it doesn't matter too much to us right now. It matters more what they do with that roster. There were a lot of teams that put good players on their 40-man, including Seattle putting Julio Rodriguez on there. That's very exciting to know that he is now promoted. And Nelson Velasquez, we talked about him briefly in the last episode. We'll talk about him in this because it's the fall league, and that's where he really came out to play. He's on the 40-man now. Brent Honeywell is an Oakland Athletic. Yes, sir. Him and Puck, Ty. It's like our two favorite prospect pitchers are now going to be neck and neck. So we're going to be watching a lot of Athletics games this year, assuming, of course, Honeywell is up.
Imagine if they piggyback. That would be like the culmination of awesome.
Yeah. There's been some lesser notable things, but obviously you never know how they work out. Sean Anderson was claimed by the Blue Jays from the Padres. Nothing big on that. What was it? Nick Nelson he's on the Phillies from the Yankees. Mackenzie Gore's now on the 40-man. Hey, everybody's excited for that. Let's see. There were some other ones that were a little more interesting. Now we did have, of course, Thor signed with the Angels. They're apparently far from done. One of the exciting things with hearing about Texas in the shortstop market is that, maybe Corey Seager's a fit, maybe it's Baez, but regardless, if they're spending, that's going to create a more interesting market for those higher end guys. Because we were talking before about not knowing what the market would be, right? What would their average annual value be, and the lineups they go to? Trevor Story's a guy who, for me, is so scary. Like, so scary. If I own him in dynasty leagues, I feel like his value has gone down. Free agency, very much like DJ LeMahieu. He now needs to leave, go somewhere and establish himself as a non-Colorado star, like just an MLB star.
See, I see him as a potential rebound candidate, because if you look at what's happened in Colorado over the last couple of years, like that lineup protection disappeared, right? He was once like in the middle of a train, and then he was the only person driving the train there for a little bit. So, a guy that is really reliant on getting himself into good situations, either steal bases and make hard contact. If there's nobody around him producing, then that's an issue, right? So I think that's a big part of it. If he has a good landing spot, I still like him for Detroit. I think it's him or Correa in Detroit for me.
It
that's
seems like there's
two
going to be a
options.
Detroit. Yeah, it seems from the rumors at the moment like Detroit's going to be getting one of those guys. So the pronunciation looks like it's Sia Suzuki. That's the player that will be posted. Jose Quintana
Does
signed
he
with the
not? I mean,
Pirates.
before we go any further, does he not
Yeah,
belong in Yankee Stadium with that home run call?
yeah. Sia Suzuki.
Right? Like, I mean, I'm sorry.
That's
Like, as much as I
true.
hate the Yankees, like that is
That
too
is the
good to be
call.
true.
That's the
Yeah,
call. Yeah.
that has to happen.
So Jose Quintana did sign Justin Verlander. Sorry, signed with the Pirates. Justin Verlander did sign a 2-year deal. I think he's got the ability to opt out after next year. But either way, it's a very similar deal to what we were talking about during our free agent episode, just not with the team that we were, betting on. So, but Jose Quintana with the Pirates is an interesting one. And then Pedro Severino, former catcher of Baltimore and was with Washington's organization before that, is now a Brewer, and that makes up for Pena leaving and going to Atlanta. I like the Severino signing. I feel like, Ty, I'm just going to be a sucker for Brewers because Brousseau, I like the fact that he's there now. Severino, and these are not high ceiling guys. These are guys who are just floor players, like final dudes on your roster. I don't know, playing time certainty is not there with anyone that's going to be on the Brewers this year, but that's an interesting one. And then the final thing that I see here, and I'm just very quickly, I just looked on MLBTradeRumors.com. The Rays are looking for a match in a Kevin Kiermaier trade. Yeah. Okay. News from a year ago as well, I'm sure would be the exact same thing. So yeah, that's enough of the.
To be fair though, like his defensive metrics are elite. Right. So
absolutely. But now he costs a lot more money.
But
right.
if you have a young, like if you have like last year's version of the Detroit Tigers, that's where you want a guy like Kiermaier. Right. So I don't know who would be top of mind. Like Seattle obviously has some outfielders, so they don't really need it, but they would be one that would maybe fit that category. Like where else is there a young crop of pitchers ready to go?
Kansas City.
Miami would be an example. Kansas City would also be a good fit. So I mean, those are the kind of locations that I think you're looking for in a trade.
Right, save the runs, and the nice thing with Kansas City, they do kind of have it. And with Miami, I mean, again, outfield prospects and all prospects are just that. They're prospects. They're not proven. Kiermaier has proven he will catch the ball very much like Byron Buxton. He will just also destroy his body. So it's a matter of maybe a bigger ballpark would help, or it would make it even harder because Tampa's park's huge too. I think it's a tough park for fielding in, which is one of the reasons why people really appreciate Kiermaier's defense. So, but we don't care about defense. We care about at bats, plate appearances, games played, and he doesn't do that because he gets hurt. So let's transition now, Ty, to fall league results. This I got everything here. If you are interested in looking at the fall league results, you can just Google fall league results. It'll pop up. If you want to know how we have it sorted out through fantasy, hit me up at Robbie Baseball 1, and I will share the file with you because I make mediocre spreadsheets. And if you want to have a look at what's going on and kind of what we're talking about tonight, let me know and I will pass that information on to you. What we've done is we've compiled a list of targets, and targets consist of guys who are owned in less than 5% of Fantrax leagues. And I think the only person that was even close to that, I'm trying to figure out exactly who it was, is Jahan Bay with Pittsburgh, 22-year-old. I think he's 13%. I might be wrong on that. There's somebody that, whatever. I tried to write in what their percentage ownership was. 3% for Ivan Johnson. Yeah, like that's it. Anyway, so we've got targets who are guys who are not owned yet, but have some purpose behind it as well. We're just going to go over everybody that was in the league and how they did. We've got the studliest of studs who are there, as Ty and I were talking about before, just getting at bats. But then there are guys who went and made a name for themselves, and we'll talk about what they can do going forward. So, Ty, where do you want to start tonight? Do we want to talk pitchers or hitters?
Let's talk pitchers because I think there's such a wide range in the pitcher category.
Sure.
Of breakouts, guys that are unheralded, and then some guys that are overrated. So let's dive in. I mean, Cole Henry, I think, is one of the guys that really jumps off the page here. Between him and Owen White, I think those are the two unique notables to me. I think the high strikeouts for Cole Henry in 19 innings, pretty good. 30 is a good number. The ratio is pretty significant. ERA was 3.32. I think for me, still get a little bit of contact, a couple bombs, nothing too alarming. But I think this is something that I got excited about. The batting average of 176. So he just got hit hard when he got hit.
Yep.
And so I think that's the big thing to note there. You see this a little bit with unpolished high velo guys. So, exciting stuff there. Owen White, really big step forward here with a 116 on the ERA, 23 Ks and 23 innings. So pretty standard stuff for a starter. Nothing else too notable in this list. Anything on those two guys that jump off at you, Robbie?
No, I mean, happy for Cole Henry to be getting it done. I mean, a 111 whip is beautiful. And then Owen White with a .94. Those are the things that I'm really interested in. A lot of guys that we're going to talk about have good Ks, but they also struggle with walks. So to see guys who are able to contain those runners, even if these are like these particular guys aren't necessarily guys who have issues with that, but just knowing that if there are guys here who can contain their whip, that's an important thing for me. And I try to judge players based on an entire year, and the fall league is part of that. But the fall league for a lot of these guys is where they faced the top competition. Now there are guys who are in MLB who were also in the fall league, like Zach Thompson, who Thompson finished the year with Miami. What did he get this year? 15 and a third innings, 18 Ks. He did have a save, but he also, what did he start? He was in 8 games, didn't start any, but found himself with 15 and a third innings and a 176 ERA, but the whip was high, 163. So everything looks good until you take a look at the whip and you're like, well, what's going on here? Well, that's just a guy who's in there getting his work. And when he was getting his work, he was coming in, maybe trying to work on something. And the results, although they look okay, there's that whip, which I'm going to, knock in my head and think about this offseason. But that's kind of where I am for those guys. There are some guys as well, Ty, who had fewer innings that had high K counts that were impressive, like Jeff Criswell, 20 innings, 20 and a third innings, 28 Ks. Garrett Hill, 13 and 2/3 innings, 21 Ks and a sub-2 ERA. Also started 3 games and ended up with 2 wins. So that's pretty good. He obviously did not get a full slate of fall league games if he had 2 wins and 13 innings. So he was starting and I don't know, maybe he got hurt. I didn't actually see that. I didn't see a note on him for injuries. And then we had Rosny Contreras, who's the Pittsburgh Pirate, former Yankee prospect who where was he here? 14 innings, had 18 Ks. He had a really good season for himself too. After people were talking about the Taillon deal and what exactly was moving where, and Pittsburgh just collecting bulk. And even if that was the case, where they were just trying to get one extra guy in every deal they made, that's where a guy like Rosny Contreras really pays off down that stretch.
Well, and don't forget, he actually got a couple of major league innings this year as well too, right? So he's on the cusp. For a guy like that, you're going to want to pay attention to. Pitched to a 264 across 2 levels last year, and then spotless in the very short stint at the major league level there. So, definitely a notable guy out of that, probably going to be at least in the conversation as a rotation piece for the very, very depleted Pirates rotation. So I think that's
now they got Jose Quintana. So
comment stands.
It's a matter of what they want to do, right? No, you bring up a really good point. If the Pirates want to do what the Marlins have done before and what other teams have done before, is bring up players when the team is not going to be competitive and let them learn at the MLB level, that's a great idea. We love that. Washington looks like they might be doing that. Josiah Gray and Kyber Ruiz amongst that crew of guys who could be coming up. It's a good thing because it's important to make sure that you have players who have major league experience and you're not just trying to bring up a prospect. And it's one guy in a team of veterans. And if he doesn't stick, all of a sudden you've got that, gap at third base or whatever it is. And if you bring up a few guys at once, bodies can move around a little bit more. Seattle's in that position too. They are starting to bring guys up. And then like Jared Kelnick, win, lose or draw, they're sticking with them.
Yeah, a little bit of an older prospect next. Nick Vespi in the Baltimore system had a pretty strong season last year at AA, but finished the season at AAA where he got just ripped. Wasn't a great showing in 19 innings, 15 earned runs, 6 home runs, right? So there's some home run issues here that we're going to be looking out for, but had a fairly impressive stint in the fall league. 3 wins at 2.7 ERA, pitched in 9 games, 11 hits with just the single home run. So that's a pretty good outcome for Vespi. Something to note, definitely a bullpen arm, right? So you see, we've seen some moves out of Baltimore already. They've Hunter Harvey's out of Baltimore this offseason, right? So Vespi could be filling some of that spot at some point next year. I would imagine he'll start in AAA, but we might see him later as an older prospect.
And I think that's why he ended up in the fall league, because this happens every year, right? Teams send those, I don't want to say post-hype guys, because they're not. They were never hyped, but they send those guys who they're probably wondering, should they be on our 40-man? Do they have what we need against better competition? And a guy like Vespi, who was not good in AAA, gets the extra time to kind of prove himself. And, it looks like his ceiling could be the potential, of course, ceiling, right? Everybody be careful here. He could be a closer. He could have 100 Ks in 70 or so innings at the MLB level. He's not owned anywhere in Fantrax, so he's available in your Dynasty League. So depending on your formats, he might be one of those absolute last rounds of your rookie draft dart throws. And those are good investments to make.
And very easily, could be a Rule 5 pick, right? Because I don't think he made it onto Baltimore's 40. So he very easily could be someone that is selected given his age at 26.
Right. If somebody thinks they can go and he's already bullpen ready, they definitely could do that.
But what he's stand to lose with the 26-year-old, the arm is built up. All right. He's a bullpen arm. You have no risk if you need depth in your bullpen. So I think somebody would take a stab at this if they believe he's a major league arm. That's the real question here.
Yeah, and there are 6 other guys kind of to talk about here on the pitcher side. Coleman Crow with the Angels. Remember how excited everybody was for Chris Rodriguez? He's going to change baseball, right? Like a prospect who had injury issues and then came up and ended up being on the Angels this year. But again, injury issues struck, and I don't know that he is even lining up to play in 2022. I think he might be injury recovered. Don't quote me on that. But Coleman Crow was, I believe, the youngest guy in the AZL this year. He's another high K guy, 3.71 ERA in his first pro season. Let me see, when was his draft year here? Did the work, 2019, 28th round draft pick. And there are going to be a lot of guys that I'm going to mention between 17 and 19 that were drafted that were post the 15th round, which, as we now know, is not an MLB thing. So these are the kind of guys who maybe some of the teams are just trying to shake out the cobwebs and see what they got with them. But I mean, if he starts, if they continue to make him a starter, he could be 170K over 50 inning pitch guy with a 4-ish ERA. And as a 20-year-old, that's somebody worth taking. And again, not owned in your dynasty leagues. I guarantee you.
Yeah, I would agree.
Why don't you talk about the what was he, the RP of the AZL? AZL. I'm going to call it that. It's the AZL because we're Canadian.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny too because I've seen the name but not really dug too far into him, and that tells you everything you need to know about everybody that's going to be surprised by Graham Spraker in the Toronto system, right? So we're pretty Homer-ish type guys. He was named, as Robbie mentioned, the reliever of the Arizona Fall League. So he had a 0 ERA, a 0.48 WHIP, 16 Ks in 10 innings. So pretty respectable stuff. He's a guy that is obviously a part of a very wide open back or front end of the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen potentially this year. So I don't know that they're going to run him out to open the season. A 31st round pick out of Quincy University in 2017. Boom. So this is a journeyman through the minors, no questions. But if you look at what he did in 2021, a 2.62, a 0 in a very small sample at AAA, but a respectable 2.74 across the AA innings, 42 innings. Strikeout K per 9 is impressive at 13.1. So he does fit the bullpen mentality. He's 26 like Vespi. So, in all likelihood, is going to be forced into action given they threw him on the 40, right? So I think that's a no-brainer at this stage in the game.
Man, every time you say no-brainer, I just want to hit a button that says, or that makes Justin Bieber saying, "Baby, it's a no-brainer," because that's exactly what happens in my head when I hear it. So now everyone knows. Seth Corey is the next guy up with San Francisco. 23-year-old lefty, major walk issues in 2021, but K's for days. I don't really know what to say about a ceiling on a guy like this. Look at what San Francisco did with that interesting bullpen of theirs this year. They could make Seth Corey a guy.
Rolling back really quick, Spriger's not on the Jays 40-man roster.
So he is a Rule 5 eligible.
That's likely a snipe. That's probably going to happen.
So I'm trying to think of what the Jays would have to do in order to keep him. I don't think they can drop and take him now. I believe at this moment in time, they're not permitted. Doesn't mean they couldn't make a trade. They had a
chance.
Tonight.
They had a chance and didn't do it.
Yeah, and it's not like he wasn't already rolling in the fall league. So, and we've seen this before where teams, if it happens, teams take Jays relief pitchers and then end up giving them back, and then they become Jordan Romano, much like Jordan Romano. So we'll see what's up with that. But back to the lefty, Seth Corey. He is a third-round pick from 2019, so he probably is owned in some of your leagues. Not very many. But again, this is like a relief pitcher type guy, and major walk issues. Just, if you're seeing the name, looking at what's going on, just approach with caution. But I kind of trust in that San Francisco bullpen right now to make better pitchers out of what they've got.
Yeah, no real argument there. There's a lot of guys on this list that are well known, so maybe a good time to just chop off some guys that had some interesting fall experiences. I mean, Jackson Rutledge is a guy that got absolutely lit, 6.98 in 19 innings, just 17 strikeouts. So still a little ways to go in his development, but high hopes for Rutledge there in Washington.
Ty, I think Rutledge was also coming back from injury, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct, he was. So, I don't know that it was a devastating one, but I think he missed a good chunk of this year. Because I think we all thought we might see him in September, but I do think the delay is definitely why he's here. Because really, you don't normally see a guy like Rutledge that dominated all the way through in the fall league unless they want him to be ready, right? So it's an interesting play here. A familiar name from your storied past here, Robbie, is Juan Then. Got ripped 12.46. That could be the end of the story. There. I had to squeeze that in.
Then was picked up in the Rule 5. I can't remember his home team, if it was Minnesota, whoever it was, but he went to Seattle, and it was like, whoa, like here's a guy, right? Here's a guy. Nope, not a guy. He was returned.
Another Rule 5 guy we saw in past, Stephen Woods, was here. 5.65 ERA. Let's move on. Slade Zaccone is a guy that continues to just, to me, be one of the more underappreciated pitching prospects. Like, I think everybody knows who looks into the pitching prospects, who Zaccone is, but I think he's just so underappreciated for what he's done because he's not like today's superstar. I just think he's going to get stuff done. 2.4 in the fall, 14 Ks across 13 innings. Across 15 innings. So just very mundane, but moves the needle, right?
Go to Rizzi like.
Yeah, I mean, it's right there. So just a guy that I think if you're looking for a good, reliable, long-term starting pitcher, I think it's a guy a lot of people should be focused on in that group. So if we go a touch further down in this list, we have to go a touch further to get to any other notables. But before I do, Robbie, we're passing some of our targets. So
I was just going to say, why don't I do the guys nobody cares about? Because those are the guys I care about. And you do the ones that people may own or maybe targets. Next guy up is a Houston Astro. And we know that system sucks because MLB.com said the best prospect they have is a catcher. We know that's silly. So Joe Record. What? Joe Record? What do we want to call him? It's Joe Record, R-E-C-O-R-D. We've got the option.
DJ Record?
Oh. Press record. So he needed everybody to see what he could do in the fall league. In 11 2/3 innings, 13 Ks. He got a save for himself. The whip decimal 5.1. No earned runs given up. 13 Ks. I like it. And Record is decent control guy. He's okay with the Ks overall over the pro career, and a 28th round pick in 2017. So a nobody from nowhere, owned nowhere. You can get him. Press record.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. I mean, next on the target list, RJ Dabovich, which, I mean, It's just a beautiful reliever name, if you ask me.
Oh, 100%.
So I think he belongs there. 186 over 9 2/3, 13 strikeouts. So good ratio there. Lots to like. He's in the Giant system. So surprise, surprise, they got another sneaky reliever. That's kind of what their calling card is these days. It's a very interesting kind of path for him because he's been pretty good throughout the minors across a couple levels, high A and double, 278 last year. 302, 278 across those. K to 9, a ridiculous 17.3. So, hello, we're listening. RJ Dabavish, what up? That's,
how you doing?
I on that note, I did see an excellent TikTok today, and it was the I forget what it was called. It was the let me pull it up really quick. Fill some time while I pull it up.
I was going to say, nailed that one. The final target that we did have is Damon Jones. Jones in 9 1/3 innings, 7 games or 7 appearances, had 12 Ks, a save, a decimal 9.6 ERA, a 1.29 WHIP. Also had a win. Jones is property of the Phillies. He's a 26-year-old, so not a young guy. Very much like Spraker with Toronto. He's Ks for days. Possible save hold league darling, and he was an 18th round pick in 17. So he's not owned. You can get him. Look at the body of work and make a decision that you think is best for you. But those are the 7 targets: Vespi, Crow, Spraker, Corey, Record, Dabovich, and Jones on the pitcher side. And these are all easy to acquire, not just targets in general. Of course, there was pitchers who are already owned in dynasty leagues.
Yeah.
But,
so rolling back to the TikTok, it was
of course, get to TikTok,
like as in Mr. T, Foo Fitness. And so the guy, there was a trainer talking to him and said, "I need 15 what up foos," and he's got the rubber bands against one of the racks. And he just go, "What up, fool? What up, fool?" And he's pulling his arms up in the air. It was an excellent TikTok.
So the workout is like a Mr. T action.
What up, fool? No, he's coming at him. Like he's coming at you. Right?
That was absolutely worth it.
I know. I found it funny. I will send it to you later.
Oh, great. Nothing better than talking about this on a podcast. Nobody's going to get it. And then you just send it to me.
No,
perfect.
No, people will go and look it up.
Oh, will they? Okay.
Yeah, back me up, people.
Yeah, I was going to say, if they do, that's good for them. All right, so let's move on to hitters. And Ty, we decided because there's I forget what it is, 103 or something like that. We're basically just going to kind of go down and discuss based on position. And then we do have our targets as well. There's guys like Juan Yepez with St. Louis, who I mean, I said this to you before we started recording. I'm already seeing articles and tweets about his relevance in redraft. What? Lucan Baker, everybody. Plus, they got that. What's his name? Silver? Is it Duke Silver? Oh no, wait, it's Goldie. That's right. St. Louis has some solid first base options. Not that Yepez is out of it.
I mean, things that I did not expect to hear tonight were Duke Silver references, but
Big Parks
excellent nonetheless. Yeah, excellent nonetheless. I mean, I'm with you. Like, there's this. Like, is there a 0% chance? No. But is it highly unlikely that we're going to see him in short of a very catastrophic injury plague season for the Cardinals?
Right.
Yes. I mean, it's very unlikely we see Mr. Yepez. It's a very unrealistic, but good for this guy. I mean, 295 with 7 bombs, 26 RBIs is more than respectable. So unless he's playing second base or even potentially third base if Arenado gets hurt.
Right, and they don't move Gorman over to third because Gorman played second base or appears to now be a second baseman. Yeah, like, or left field, whatever. All we're saying is he's not owned in your dynasty leagues. He's going to be a very hot commodity, very hot target, but it doesn't mean he's going to be Randy Arozarena and come up and play and get all this time next year. So approach with caution. The hype is absolutely all over him, very much like Velasquez with the Cubs.
And here's a fun fact. I mean, I'm going to say this because I think it's relevant. This could be a pee in the cup kind of guy because before last season, his peak home runs were 10. Then he went off for 27 last year. Then he had 7 in the fall league. So
what's his age, Ty? I didn't get that.
He is 23. So
yeah,
still fairly young.
That's why.
And still growing. I mean, I will say this: he's listed at first, third, and outfield. So I will say this, that puts him into relevance for me with the right field position for the Cardinals still being a bit of a flux. So I think that could give him a slot with that team. You might see Tyler O'Neill slide to right, and depending on what the arm grade is here, he might slide to left. So lots of room to figure all that out still. But I for sure will move him into relevance, knowing that he plays the outfield now.
Right. And we've got, for anyone who doesn't know, Nicholas Scott, who came on with us, he was singing the O'Neill praises in one of his Fangraphs articles, which was great. And even though, like, O'Neill is Ty's guy, I am a masturbator, and that is my guy, is Harrison Bader. What were you thinking? Are you okay?
I didn't know. I didn't know where you're going with that.
What? I love the guy. He's great. But anyway.
But you're sitting in a cement room. So for you to come out with lines like that.
It's stone. It's stones. Okay. It's a bunch of stones and things from around the property. Anyway. So that's only one guy. So Atlanta has Drew Lugbauer. So at first base as well. So long. Nice to meet you, Freddie Freeman. We got a guy who had 44 at bats and hit 364 with 5 dingers in the Arizona Fall League. So no need to re-sign Freddie because you got Lugbauer. What I'm getting at here is that you don't have Lugbauer as your next guy, but it was a nice Fall League for him. He was a leader in 4 of 5 fantasy categories with 44 at bats. So some of these dudes, if they had gotten a longer run in the Fall League, may have been even bigger stars than some of the guys who are already rated as breakouts. There's guys like first baseman with the Yankees, Andres Chaparro, which I know I'm pronouncing correctly. Chaparro's a 22-year-old, good OBP, takes his walks, and the power's been getting a little bit better. I have his ceiling at Babe Ruth. I'm not sure if he can pitch, but when you're feeling good about a guy, you can just slap that on him these days. I think he was a J2 in 15 as well. So
for me, this is a guy like I'm putting a star beside on my list as a guy to watch for the future. Late bloomer, not a lot of real good production before last season, like before he spent some time across A and high A last year. Still very early in development in terms of professional baseball. But did finish high last year with a 914 OPS in a reasonable sample, nothing significant, but enough.
I think more walks than Ks, right, Ty? Am I correct on that?
You are incorrect. 24 walks to 34 strikeouts.
But that's good.
Pretty good. Yep. for a guy that also hit 8 home runs in just 129 at bats, we're listening, right? So that's why I say, like, I want to see another year of that before I get excited, but I think something notable nonetheless.
And he's absolutely going to be going into his age 23 year tie. He's absolutely one of the guys who can go from single A and finish the year triple A. If he's already in the AFL, he could even start at double A. What's the double A team?
Scranton?
Yeah, Scranton. And then what's triple A then for the Yankees?
I don't know. I just was picking one that I knew.
Okay. Anyway, back to Lugbauer very quickly, just because I didn't say he is 25 years old. He was drafted in the 11th round in 2017, but this isn't really a guy. This is just, someone that I mentioned. I just wanted to give the rest of the info on him. We did have Michael Toglia with Colorado, putting in time, 83 at bats. So he was just getting some regular playing time. Numbers are fine. 253 average, 10 runs, 12 RBIs, a couple dingers. Nothing really to write home about him. Gabe Kessinger with Houston. And again, Houston's one of the teams that's kind of interesting to talk about because the system is, apparently bad. But as Ty's talked about before, they do have young core pieces as well as some of those wily veteran guys. So you pop in a couple surprise rookies here. Things can really turn around for them. And Kessinger put up decent runs and RBIs, 13 and 10. Yes, Ty.
And remember, if you watch any of the playoffs while they were still relevant, they love to talk about how their whole rotation was late signing guys, right? 20, 21-year-olds that they picked up. So, especially in Houston for the time being, don't ignore late blooming guys because I think, they obviously targeted that a little bit as an opportunity. So something to note. Next on the list, Spencer Horwitz, which was especially early on in the Fall League, was one of the guys everybody was talking about. We've talked about him before. He was started last year in Vancouver, if I remember correctly, for the Jays.
I think so.
This is, to me, and I talked about this with Robbie before we jumped on, like this is an Eric Hosmer profile, right? Not a huge power bat, but reasonable, right? I mean, the OPS is, sitting at 993, nope, 987. Sorry, my bad. But definitely a reasonable contact bat, very good hitter. So I just think if the power can develop, it's eluding me right now. The kid that just came up with the Twins would be a similar profile.
Kirilloff?
Yes, thank you. So he's not getting the hype that a Kirilloff got, but a very similar profile to what we've seen out of Kirilloff. So someone to note that if the power does come around, he could be super relevant.
And 24 years old. So this is one of those 26-year-old guys who's been a pro for 4 years. Obviously, the missed year hurts a guy like Horowitz. 8 category potential, stolen bases not likely to exceed 5. But, I mean, if he's getting you a couple, those are nice bonuses. And this is a 24th round pick in 19. So the team has nothing invested in him until he does this. Yeah. Right now he's got some value. So it's a good thing for him. And we know in Toronto, like we got Vlad there, so he's not bumping him. Tristan Casas is the next guy up with Boston. He had a great fall league tie in 75 at bats, 373 average, 19 runs, 10 RBIs, but the power was not there. And maybe that's because he was trying to do something different. Very much like Spencer Torkelson, who in only 20 at bats had a 450 average. But again, such a small sample for him that he was also DHing. So I'm not sure if that was injury related or what was up with him. But a couple more first basemen. The last one, Ty, I want you to focus in on for people because it's unique that he's even at first base. But we do have Matt Batten with San Diego, who in 59 at bats did pretty well for himself. 4 stolen bases from a first baseman. And San Diego, and Ty just talked about Hosmer and how he's good, not great. 288 average for Batten, 10 runs, 7 RBIs, no dingas to report. No dingas. And Matt Batten is an OBP and average guy, but again, pro career, no power. That's why he was a 32nd round pick in 17. 26-year-old. This is your absolute crapshoot last pick in a draft if you just want to see something, that may or may not come together for a guy like this. So
yeah, I mean, 730 OPS is terrifying from a first baseman.
Yeah, exactly. And that's somebody who moves around the bases, right? Yeah. Like he just does not have the power.
And if you think it's a small sample, Fluke, 749 this season. So yeah, very hollow bat.
Yeah, and I'm the first guy to say you can punt power at a position if you can make it up elsewhere because you end up with a pretty decent lineup. But that player that you're punting on has to do something incredibly well, right? They have to get struck out very little. They have to walk a lot. They have to have a really high average. And that's not Matt Batten on his, best month. So that's what I mean is, crapshoot guys, right? They're at the fall league for a reason. Some of them are there to last legs with the team. A guy like Batten, that's probably what it could have been, right? They needed to send somebody else. This may have been the best guy the scouts wanted to see more of. Troy Johnston with Minnesota, with Miami, in 64 at bats, 297 average, 15 runs and 10 RBIs. Those 3 things were all in the top. I forget what it was I highlighted. Top 30th percentile of the AFL. So we did those things very well. But again, no power from Johnson. So Jake Means with Kansas City, no. 63 at bats. He had 11 runs. Nothing was good. And again, no power. So the final guy here, Ty, Texas catcher first baseman now, Sam Huff.
Sam Huff, also known as the new Scott Hatterberg, is definitely going to be relevant fantasy moving forward. I mean, he was going to be relevant before, but I think this is a great move for a power bat. I've talked about it a lot when it comes to Adley Rutschman, getting him out from behind the plate and using the bat. I like that Texas is doing this, so they're not wasting a really good power bat behind the plate. So this is, to me, elevates his profile. And if he can at all hold on to that, catcher eligibility, which we would love to see, then he becomes even more valuable moving forward. So if he can just split a little bit of time back there, I think he'd make us all super happy. So I'm buying him. I've been buying him. I'm going to continue to buy him. This is a guy that I just really like, and don't be scared of the 167 batting average. He was learning a new position, so just let it be what it is.
Yeah, so in the next category with second basemen, we've got some good notable guys. Yolbert Sanchez with the White Sox. He had muted at bats, only 35, batted 400. Nolan Gorman with St. Louis, muted at bats, 375. Nick Gonzalez with Pittsburgh, he had a good full fall league, 71 at bats, a top 20% in 4 categories: average, runs, RBIs, and stolen bases. Justin Fulkus with Texas had good runs, home runs, and RBIs in 60 at bats, but his average was 233. Jeter Downs of Boston, 50 at bats for him, 5 dingers, 14 RBIs, and 4 stolen bases. And then you had some of the lesser known guys like Ivan Johnson with Cincinnati, who this guy held his own: 6 dingers, 11 RBIs, 12 runs, and 60 at bats. So pencil that guy in. Another guy to look at here, Brendan Donovan, not for the same reasons, and only 44 at bats. He had 10 runs, 8 RBIs, 2 dingers, 2 stolen bases, but a 364 average. And this is a St. Louis player. We always have to be careful because they can just create an MLBer. They have the ability to do that. But the guy at second base here that I want to focus on first is Jaehwan Bae with Pittsburgh. And what was it? 81 at bats. He had 8 stolen bases and 20 runs. So he moved around and got himself in position and then was driven in. And that's pretty hard to do on a 247 average, to be able to get in 20 times of your 81 at bats. So Bae, I believe, was an international signing with Pittsburgh. I don't have that info in front of me as to when or what the deal was with him. It did not have the draft information when I was looking, so I apologize for that. But the important information is that he's just a consistent stolen base guy and a high floor player with a Pittsburgh team. And as a 22-year-old, that should play. We know we've got O'Neal Cruz hanging out over there, shortstop, second base. There's going to be room for Bae to move in. I like it.
Definitely. I mean, there's a lot of guys in this list to know. Gilbert Sanchez is a guy that I'm a fan of. I think he's going to creep into that White Sox lineup. I think it's a big reason why we saw Cesar Hernandez's option not picked up. I think there's still an outside shot that they're going to sign somebody the offseason, maybe a multi-position type guy. Eduardo Escobar might be an interesting fit there, given the price and the contract length that he'll probably chase.
Okay.
But there is some really fascinating guys in this list. I mean, Ezekiel Duran is a sneaky guy in the Yankees system.
Well, he was third base, Ty. He was third base, just so we're clear.
Man, I snuck in.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so what? Here, let me wrap up second base quick, and then you can
wait.
You can Duran.
I can save this because he's listed on Baseball Reference as a second baseman as well. So I will wrap that in. Fun fact.
Nailed it.
Yep, nailed it. So he did have 19 bombs last season. So that's a very interesting second baseman profile. So that's why
did that include? Sorry, Ty. Did that include the AFL? Do you know, or is that seen as separate? Because he had 3 in the AFL. Just because that would be a good capper to also.
Nope, he would be 22 if you include the AFL there. So
that is a great year.
Yep, 827 OPS. So I like it. I like what you see there. I think there's some upside there. I think he was part of the Joely Rodriguez trade, maybe.
He was. What was that deal?
I can look it up right now, but you continue on while I find that.
Sure. So we do have one more notable second baseman. It's Jose Tena, second base, 20-year-old with Cleveland in 59 at bats. Awesome average, 407, 15 runs, 9 RBIs, 2 stolen bases. But this is a no power guy. Also, this is a 20-year-old. He could become a 5-category guy. Think Lindor. Think Lindor is your best case scenario for anybody, really. But think Lindor with that environment that he's in. Maybe that's something that you could get like Lindor light. That would be fun. That would be a fun thing to do. So did you find that information, Ty, on Duran? What was his trade?
He might have been involved in the Gallo trade.
Oh, he was. You're right. He was that was the Gallo trade. So the only other guy to note here, Ty, is Christian Koss, Koss, former Rocky prospect, traded to Boston in the Pilar trade in 2020. He had 45 at bats, but did not do anything. So just so people are aware, we're watching. We got eyes on everybody. So talking about second base, third base guys, Ty mentioned Duran, now strictly into kind of the third base dudes. Tampa Bay had somebody who came out of nowhere and did really well. And isn't that exciting? Curtis Mead, which is good. Good for him. 304 average, 15 runs, 11 RBIs, 3 dingers, stolen base. Cool, man. Andy Weber with the Cubs. These are the guys I'm interested in, right? The guys who are not on the dominant teams. He had 81 at bats, 284 average, 19 runs, 20 RBIs. Power wasn't there, but that's okay. I don't know. Logan Davidson was the next guy kind of to note. 294 average, 14 runs, 11 RBIs, 68. Yeah,
thanks for coming out.
Yeah, just a decent fall league, which is good. Nathan Eaton with Kansas City. They don't have that third baseman of the future. Been 71 at bats. This guy did 338 average, 11 runs, 4 stolen bases from third base and 15 runs. But the power, 1. So, and then the next guy, Brett Baty, highly touted prospect. Brett Baty, 83 at bats in the fall league, 301 average, 16 runs, 15 RBIs, 1 bag, and 1 dinga. So third base, solid, but no one that really did as well as some of those first base options here.
Guy Rosario is a sneaky one. Just don't overlook him. Still needs a little bit of seasoning, buried in the Padres system. Could be an interesting trade chip. That's why I bring him up.
Yeah, no, good call.
So find himself into a roster somewhere else.
Here are some catchers. So I'll just go as quick as we can. Gabriel Moreno, we talked about him before with the Jays, 342 average, 15 runs, 18 RBIs, but only 1 dinger. That's my issue with that. Austin Wells, 305, the Yankee prospect, Austin Wells, 305 average, 11 runs, 16 RBIs in 59 at bats, 1 stolen base, but 1 dinger. And then Patrick Bailey with San Francisco, 45 at bats, 289 average. The rest of the counting stats, he didn't have enough at bats to really make the impact. However, he was 3 RBIs, 6 runs, whereas in only 15 more at bats, Austin Wells was able to double him in runs and quadruple him in RBIs. So Austin Wells did himself a service. And then you've got Israel Pineda, who in 24 at bats had a decent average. I don't know. I'm reaching on some of these guys, but the at bat totals really aren't there for a lot of these guys. And then when we get into Corey Lee of the number 1 rated prospect with Houston in 55 at bats, he hit 236 with 6 runs, 4 RBIs, a stolen base, and no home runs. So, pick your poison on the catchers, guys. I don't know. It certainly is something that both Ty and I agree on. One of the few things we do that it's just not worth the major investment. Well, but you don't want to have 0 in your system.
I do find it funny how many people are overvaluing Corey Lee because he is Houston's number 1 prospect, right? That's been the one thing that I've noted this offseason, just how many people think he's the greatest catcher on the planet when, he's a catcher in fantasy baseball. So
you blame MLB.com for that. Just talking about catchers makes me want to. So I'm going to have another. So let's talk outfielders, Ty, because I love me some outfielders. They can do so many things in so many different ways. Who'd you see here on the? There's a couple good targets here. 4 category. Cameron Meisner, is that the first guy?
For me, no. The one that I want to note really quickly, Sully Matisse in Kansas City. I think this is a really interesting one. And Jorge Soler is a very interesting profile comparison. Very similar type of player. So, still a little bit of development for Matisse. The strikeout rates are still absolutely there. So certainly concerning, without a doubt, but something that I think would be a really buy low option, right? So if you're looking at anybody on this list and looking at, okay, how can I acquire somebody for dirt cheap? Well, this is kind of how you do it. You look at a guy like that who gives you a couple categories, but not the batting average and the whole kit and caboodle yet. So I think if you can, rob somebody of him, that would be one of my guys that I'm looking at as a late bloomer. Played in the 2018 Futures game, right? So he's not a nobody. So somebody might still overvalue him. So just be careful with that. But he should be relatively cheap to acquire. Cameron Meisner for me is, I don't know, 7 home runs. Is that good? In 72 at bats, is that
is that a thing you want? Is that something? Does that entertain you? The 194 average does not.
Yeah,
but it just shows you how productive he was upon contact. Right, 4 stolen bases, 14 RBIs, and 21 runs. So but the strikeouts concerning as can be. Right, he almost had a 50% strikeout rate.
Well, and this could be the Arizona Fall League version of what I always talk about with the fastballs, right? So to me, he had 12 home runs across high A and double this year, right? So to me, He only had one home run at AA in a small sample, to be fair. But 774 OPS at high A, right? So I think this is a bit of a mirage. So don't get lost in this one. Don't look to add him in trades just yet. I think it's a little early there. I'm gonna let you handle the next one because that looks like one that you should have to try to pronounce.
Oh no. Oh, like from Can Smith. The Najigaba, I believe, is just a mistake. I can't believe that's actually because Cannon Smith, I think, was a San Francisco drafted player who traded to the Yankees. I think that's right.
There's a hyphen in it, so I was super.
No, you might be right. This could have been a name change guy. And I'll look it up to be sure.
Okay.
But
I'll move on to somebody more obvious with JJ Bleday, who had a very mundane Arizona Fall League for a guy that's supposed to be good. He was good. 315. 5 home runs, 24 RBIs in basically a full slate, 89 games. The OPS with 4 digits, 1003. So lots to like there. I mean, not really shocking here. JJ Bleday is a baseball player.
It was good though, Ty. Because remember when we were doing the minors reports earlier in the year and Bleday was struggling?
Yep.
This is what a player of his caliber needs. They need to be able to come into the fall league when it's supposed to be against the best competition and do what he's done. 4 categories of greatness, including I didn't include the 2 steals in that greatness, but to also chip in with a couple steals. Perfect.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
I was to say, and to introduce the per game stat that I was trying to sell you on that you clearly weren't buying before we started recording. I'll say it now. What I did was I added up all of the counting stats in fantasy: stolen bases, RBIs, home runs, and runs. So you just add all those numbers up, and then you take the number of times they were either caught stealing or struck out or both, which is what I did. You minus those, you get that one number from those 6 different categories, and you divide it by the number of games they played. And then per game, you can assume that they're going to be able to produce this type of a stat for you. And what I'm trying to do with the strikeouts and the caught stealing is take away streakiness. So a player that could be on a hot streak or a cold streak, in average at the end of the year, you can expect them to do, whatever it is. And JJ Bleday put up 2 points, two positive stats per game in the fall league. And I thought that was really good for somebody who this year was struggling down in like the 1.3s. So it's a stat that I keep track of. It's something I'm trying to figure out if it actually works. I think it's just a tool that you can use for consistency. And then you have to also tack in things like average in your league, OBP, OPS, whatever it is you're using. And then, combine that together. It's another tool to use when you're trying to be the best.
Yep. Well, definitely. And I mean, JJ Bleday's a hitter, right? It's never been about contact skills. It's always been about whether the power would develop. And I think we're starting to see it. I mean, I don't know that they're going to rush JJ to the pros this season. You'll probably see him after the Super 2 deadline, or if that still exists, after whatever the lockout entails this year. So, yeah, I mean, in this list, though, there's only really a handful of guys that were relevant to me. Elijah Durham, I think, is a guy that's notable. He had 351, 14 runs, 2 bombs, 13 RBIs, and 10 stolen bases and 77 at bats. I mean, I know you're the speed guy here, Robbie. So I know you're in on a guy like this. So what are your takeaways here?
Well, this is the tough part. Doesn't strike out a lot, which I like. Walked more than he K'd, which I like. But I don't know if why is he getting to this point? Why is this? Why is Dunham not a guy that has previously been on my radar? Right, he's 23-year-old Yankee, which already the Yankee part just hurts. He's an all category kind of guy. 40th round pick in 2019. Ty, that's why we don't know who he is.
But here's why, though: 13 home runs and 28 stolen bases this year in just 339 at bats. So
but I was saying
that's how you get there, though. Yeah.
Sorry, but what I was getting at was, why is it that we don't know about him? Well, because he's a college guy that was taken so late in the draft that he probably got $1,000 or $500, and then the next day had to fly to wherever the heck the Yankees players have to report. Hell, I'm guessing. But anyway,
he was probably a senior guy, right? So I mean, he played for Indiana in 2020. So. Like he is a senior sign for sure at that age.
He played in 2020
at NCAA. Yep.
Real. So I wonder if Did he not sign? And then he was just after, because he was drafted in 19 in the 40th round. Anyway, it doesn't matter because he's a Yankee now, and that's what we're talking about. But 23-year-old, this is exactly the type of guy that no one will look at, even after they see this, right? All categories, but stolen base is the big one. And what usually happens with stolen base guys? Well, they can't get on base. They're not a good average guy. He's the exact opposite. So to me, jumps him way up. Elijah Dunham, outfielder with the Yankees. Just, think about it, find a spot, look to draft him in your deep leagues somewhere really, really late, and hope like hell, depending on when your draft is, that it's not spring training when you do that rookie draft, because if he is getting a shot with the big league club, which he probably will if they put him in the AFL, all of a sudden he's going to start to pop up in all those articles, and everybody that gets written about in the spring, the draft stock just goes up and up and up and up. And all of a sudden Dunham might just become somebody who you can't really get. So you really, right at this point in time, only need to worry about the hardcore guys like us and you that are listening, and your league mates that might be listening, and people who are Yankee fans. Other than that, it's a clean slate, and he doesn't have enough pro time yet to truly be able to have made a mark across the board.
Correct. Yeah, a guy on the similar cut of cloth, Michael Ciani, is a guy that had some hype before, has kind of lost the shine. To me, is a guy that you can buy right now for really, really cheap. I think this is going to be the year where he kind of comes out of the woodwork. I think the power will be there for the first time. This is center fielder in the Cincinnati system, and we know how many people have shuttled through center field in Cincinnati.
They love them some outfielders.
So the reality is there's going to be some space because no one's been able to lock down that position. Probably towards the end of this year will be his earliest potential arrival, but I think the reality, given the backlog of outfielders that they do have, I think they'll probably wait till the year after to let him jump forward. So unless they surprise people again, I think it's a foregone conclusion that we see him the following year.
Well, I got another one. It's a Milwaukee outfielder, and we know that system doesn't have the best rep, but in only 30 at-bats, Joey Wiemer caught my eye with a 467 average. So then I did the deep dive, and I looked in and I saw, oh, this is my kind of guy. Home runs, solid walks, 30% K rate, all the things I like. Now, 30% K rate I don't like, but that just goes part and parcel with it. But he's good average, good OBP. 27 home runs, Ty, in 370 at-bats in 2021, suggest he could have 30 home run MLB power here. And this was a 4th round pick in 2020. So Joey Wiemer with Milwaukee, lesser known dude. Remember this draft? With this draft, we got to cover every single player because there were so few taken 150 in that 5-round draft. Well, Joey Wiemer's probably owned in your dynasty league, but he certainly will not be highly thought of. And this fall league did not do enough to catapult him anywhere, but you can probably make him the second prospect in one of your trades, right? You got to do that sly thing where you ask for a notable prospect and then Joey Wiemer with whatever it is you're trying to trade. And then when they don't want to trade the notable prospect, you're like, okay, well, let's just do it with Wiemer and whatever. And then you get what you want and you make everybody happy.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're going with that. The reality is there's a lot of guys in this outfield, and I want to comb through a couple of relevance ones. I mean, for me, Hunter Bishop is a guy that I owned everywhere and I got rid of. And this fall league is kind of consistent with why I wanted to get rid of him. I saw some decline in what they were expecting out of him. He was a highly touted guy, and I dished him every single league I could find a way to get rid of him. He was not great in the fall league. 72 at bats, 181 average, OPS 466. Nope, sorry, 716. Got crossed up there. 237 average there. Sorry, recoiling back. So not good. The guy that I just read you the stat line on was Yoelqui Cespedes, whatever that name is.
Yoelqui Cespedes?
Yeah. International signing last year in the White Sox system. Was that? No, that's not the same guy.
Nope. Yeah, Cespedes.
Okay.
Yoelqui Cespedes. Pedro Leon was one of the other guys. He's with Houston. 66 at bats for him. He didn't do good, didn't do bad. 3 stolen bases is good. 9 RBIs, 9 runs. That's fine. 258 average, fine. 1 dinger.
Well, and quickly, Cespedes minor league stats this year are good. 285, 813 OPS. So could be a blip on the radar, but definitely something to note against high level competition to see that big of a skew versus what we saw in his minor league season. Definitely a little concerning there. The guy that everybody's been talking about, Nelson Velasquez, was a guy that, people are surprised by, but I mean, listen, if he was a highly touted international signing that didn't produce early on, and guess what? Now he is. So, surprise, 16-year-old wasn't ready at the age 18. Shocking. There's only a handful of those guys that can do it, and they're called Hall of Famers. So I'm not too worried about late transition there. I like I said, I think he's worth owning, and I think he has a reasonable chance to break camp with the Cubs this year.
Wow. Okay. That would be fun. Lars Nootbaar did get some time with the big league club last year, came down to the AFL, and in 70 at bats, so regular playing time, really, because just to be clear here, I believe Nelson Velasquez led the AFL. Now, I did not include the final, like the championship league stats in this. I did this before that game. We're recording Sunday night. It was Friday night or Saturday night. Anyway, in 70 at bats for Nootbaar to Velasquez's 97, he had a 314 average, 21 runs, 13 RBIs, and 5 home runs. The runs are comparable to Velasquez with 27 less at bats. Home runs are 4 different, and then 7 on RBIs. So really, very what I'm trying to say is let's not go crazy with Velasquez here, because we got a guy. Excuse me, we got a guy who came up to MLB, did not light the world on fire in Lars Nootbaar, but goes to the AFL and gets it done. So just like, everybody take a breath here. Take a breath before you go crazy. And another guy, Ty, we got to talk about Ezequiel Tovar, the shortstop with Colorado. Do you remember how smart everybody thought they were when they were like, Ezequiel Tovar, boom, I'm drafting him, or I'm picking him up off, waivers, and I can stash him in my minors, whatever. Well, in 84 at bats, this guy with a, presumably clear path to playing time shortly in Colorado was able to put up a 167 average. Not good. 3 home runs, which is fine. 2 stolen bases, again, fine. 10 runs, 10 RBIs, which is on the outside of the top 30 for percentage production. Not great. Next guy below him, Marco Luciano, who we all know, top prospect, 72 at bats. He did not steal a base. He had 13 runs, 3 dingers, 13 RBIs, 7 runs, and a 236 average. Different scenarios between these two guys, right? Ezequiel Tovar has been hyped, and with the Colorado hype and all that stuff, we talked about it before, he's on this pedestal now where he's supposed to take the next step, and he certainly had the opportunity to, and a lot of playing time, and didn't get it done. But Marco Luciano also did not come and rip the cover off the ball.
But I mean, how do you turn away a guy like Ezequiel Tovar when there's been so many successful middle infielders of the last 5 years in Colorado, right? It's an obvious development farm, right?
Well, hey, let's not be too mean.
Cover ball off the ball. I mean, come on.
Let's not be too mean, because Trevor Story has done his thing, but I understand what you're saying.
Long before that. So
he was 2012.
Development since Story has been sad. Yet there's been several hyped guys that should have been there. A guy that played really well this fall and got himself onto the 40-man roster in LA was Jacob Amaya. 326 average, 3 runs, 3 home runs, in just 46 at bats. So enough for the Dodgers to be super happy. They're obviously protecting some depth, and I mean, to me, that does nothing more than signal that Corey Seager is for sure leaving. I think that's a foregone conclusion. Given that addition to the 40-man. So I think that's that is a ship that has sailed.
Definitely. Well, you've already got Trey Turner, who is now being touted, especially amongst fantasy for redrafters, as the 1-1 in this year's draft, because the opportunity. Oh yeah. Trey Turner 1-1 in this. Rotosaurus's friend of the show, Dave, has said that would be his guy if he got him. And I don't disagree when you look at the body of work from last year and the opportunity for next year. But we're not
previous years where he had barely over 100 games. Let's
just go with we're not redraft guys, and we're going to stay out of that conversation because it's not worth having. But I wanted to talk about the shortstops here, Ty. One of the reasons was we've got guys like Bryson Stott, who had a great fall league, 80 at bats. He led in 4 categories, not led, but had great lines in 4 categories, including stolen bases where he had 5, 26 RBIs, 20 runs, and a 325 average. Phillies first round pick last year. And then you got a guy like Jeremiah Jackson, who's been a high school drafted player from the Angels, slowly coming up. He got 56 at bats. He was able to get some runs and RBIs, even hit 3 dingers, but a 161 average and 40 some percent strikeout rate. So it wasn't all, roses and lollipops for the prospects that came here. There's a lot of struggle that goes on amongst the guys that you want to see good things from. And even a friend of the show, Michael Govier's son, Yusniel Diaz, who I believe he watched him hit a home run from the stories I've gathered from some of the other podcasts that I've been listening to when he was at First Pitch, which is certainly an event that I hope to be attending next year. But it was the only home run that Yusniel Diaz hit, and he watched that 27 at bats for him, 222 average. Tons of runs though. In 27 at bats, he had 7 runs and 9 RBIs. So you gotta look at a bit of this stuff, which we did. I try to identify guys that you might need to dive a little bit deeper on. Jose Calbarello is another shortstop who in 57 at bats had 4 steals and 11 RBIs. It depending on your league setting, depending on how deep your league goes. We know guys, listeners, that have 150 man plus minor league systems. Most of the waters that we tread in are 50 minors deep, which when you have 30 team leagues, you're getting into a ton of guys. But hey, let us know if there's anyone from the fall league that you had an eye on and you're curious about. Hit us up at Dingers Pod. We'd love to talk to you about it. I think that covered the bulk of the targets here. We talked about Troy Johnston with Miami, the 24-year-old OBP guy. We've talked about Dunham, Brendan Donovan, Jose Tena, Weimer. Yo.
And let me ask you really quick, a guy that you are now buying more of because of the fall league results, and a guy that you are going to buy less of because of the results. I'd love to hear it.
That's an excellent question.
I'll start with my buy less and give you a second because I didn't prep you with that question.
I immediately have my buy more. So yes, okay. Who's your buy less? And I think I'm going to find mine.
My buy less is one that I know everyone else will hate, which is why I love it. Which is Bobby Miller, who I has stuff. He has excellent stuff. I just think he's going to be a relief arm, and I think everybody's buying him like he could be a potential starter. So I'm just buying less because the value to me is off. He's going to be a very Trinan type bullpen arm with dynamite stuff that if he can control it, he's bang on. And if he has the off day, he's going to get ripped. Very similar to me.
Okay. So I'll give you my buy more guy. And that was someone that I was kind of coyly talking about before in Elijah Dunham with the Yankees. An outfielder who can steal bases and has a good average is somebody that I'm happy to roster. Now, if my league is left field, right field, center field, it's going to be a little bit more important that the power develops for him. But no matter what, especially in an outfield league, but no matter what, he's an absolute target for me. It's a matter of how aggressive I want to be in acquiring him. Do I want to say he's going to be more valuable than some of the guys who were taken, I don't know, in post 60 in the draft last year, the MLB draft, and then some of the guys who are outside the top 20 J2 guys from this year's upcoming class? Well, that's where we're going to have to figure it out. Is he a top 90 prospect for me on my draft board? We'll see. But fortunately, I don't have any drafts coming up for at least 2 months, and there'll be time to sort that out. And then we do need the J2 guys to sign before everything can be made official. And of course, we need to have Mason McRae come on and talk to us about last year's draft and all those players, and then we can evaluate what happened after that. So that Elijah Dunham is my buy more. Ty, who is your buy more guy?
Yeah, I see. I'm struggling with my buy more guy. I mean, for me, I almost always want to buy pitching. So I'm trying to force myself to buy an offensive bat. And so because a lot of the guys that were breakouts, I have pieces of in a lot of places, there's not an obvious one. So I'm going to go with a catcher, which is weird. Wow. I'm going to be buying more Austin Wells. To me, okay. They're fast tracking him. There's room for a catcher in New York. And he's produced at, all levels, and including now the AZL. So I mean, I'm excited about him. I'm definitely moving him up my list. I mean, this kind of confirms what I thought could have been a blip this year. Kind of confirms there's some production here. So I'm at least listening. So I'm going to be buying more of Austin Wells.
Okay, I like that. I hate saying that. I hate saying that. I think it's a good pick. Now, if I had to pick one, it's Gabriel Moreno. I'm going to buy less of, and it's not for any reason other than the power that I mentioned, but also the fact he's a catcher, and I don't want to count that because that's not fair for me to take a catcher as somebody I won't buy more because I'm not going to buy him in the first place. So I admire you, Ty, in evolving as a fantasy player and saying you are willing to get this guy. The guy that I'm going to walk away from is somebody who I thought was really sneaky a couple years ago, and that's Will Wilson with San Francisco, another outfielder. You've talked my ear off about the struggles of San Francisco outfielders. Will Wilson was a mid-round pick. Sorry, mid-round? How do you say it? He was a guy picked in the teens by the Angels and then traded in 2019 to San Francisco. Essentially, it was a money dump for some veteran. Doesn't matter who, but he hasn't been great as a pro. And then even in the AFL in 63 at bats, decent RBI and run numbers. He had 8 of each, 2 dingers, but a 143 average. And he struck out, a little less, 18% of the time, which is fine, but the walks aren't there for me. 5 walks and 63 at bats. I'm just not interested in an outfielder that I thought was going to be special.
15 home runs this year in the minors, so not nothing. It could
absolutely
could be interesting. I understand the reason. The hype's definitely wearing off. So I mean, he definitely becomes more interesting to me. I mean, this is the kind of profile guy that I look at. Everyone
it all makes sense, Ty. I don't like him. You look into him. You like him more.
That's right. That's exactly
the world is right.
Yep, that's exactly how it normally goes. I mean, there's been lots of guys that you get way early from me, and then I get all the guys that you're out early on. It's a very good symbiosis thing that we do in our trades.
Yeah, it is the Honeywell and Puck of the world. So that's, if we were detectives, we should call ourselves Honeywell and Puck PD.
I don't hate it.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing I've said.
Yeah, that doesn't take a lot though. So that's a good spot to leave it. There's a lot here. There's a lot to take in, and for most of the average fantasy players, you're not looking too far into the data, and you're not looking at the actual live results, which we will do more of in the spring, as I always talk about. I love watching what we see here on the data become real life in the spring. Even if you guys all think it's stupid, I will continue to break it down and tell you who's going to be good out of those impossible results to measure. But we love this stuff. So it's been Rob and Tyler here. Until next time, here on